This podcast is brought to you by AppsFlyer. In today's digital world, understanding your app's journey from discovery to download is more than just insightful, it's essential. Enter AppsFlyer, the leader in mobile attribution and marketing analytics that allows you to measure the full potential of your marketing efforts, making every ad dollar work smarter. With AppsFlyer, that's your new reality. Dive deep into data-driven insights that reveal exactly where your users come from and how they'll interact with your app. AppsFlyer, where your app's potential meets performance.
Elevate your game development with Heroic Labs, the cutting-edge platform for building multiplayer games. And you need an edge to be successful in today's gaming landscape. Their scalable Nakama server empowers you to create compelling, real-time multiplayer experiences effortlessly. Benefit from features like in-game chat, leaderboards, matchmaking, and more, all designed to enhance engagement and retention. Whether you're developing for mobile, console, or PC, Heroic Labs gives you the tools to bring your community together. Unleash the full potential of your game with Heroic Labs, where every developer is a hero.
Hello, and welcome to This Week in Games 296, where we just talk about everything that's going on in the game industry. So it's Gamescom week. It's very exciting. We are going to cover a couple of the takeaways from the stream that happened yesterday for us on August 20th. A few other things going on. Black Myth Wukong is on fire. I guess the question is, where is it on fire? It appears to be on fire in China. We're wondering if it's going to bleed into the rest of the world. What's going on with Stormgate, and then a little deeper dive into Newzoo. So that's what we have up, and a lot of game talk. So hi, I'm Jen Donahoe, strategic marketing consultant at Beta Hat and Jade Inferno, and today we have Philip Black, game economist at Game Economist Consulting.
Let's cook. We got a bunch of shit on tap today. It's a big week.
Eric Kress, principal at Gossamer Consulting Group.
Yo.
And everyone, drum roll please. Thank you. Adam Telfer, the OG TWiG podcaster, is coming back. Hey,
How's it going?
Woo.
How's life?
He's so excited.
Yeah.
So
I have
excited.
not had my coffee this morning, so yeah, I'm slow.
all right.
First of all, he's not OG.
Oh,
He was a second stringer.
second string.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
definitely on the bench. While JK and Eric were definitely the original.
But the quality level of the podcast is up at least 30 or 40% with him involved.
Thanks for quantifying that. I appreciate it. Yeah.
So sorry, I forgot to do your intro, which is X-Flash developer, XEA, X-Wooga, XWB, X-Lungy.
What a
So
rogue
that's-
gallery.
That's the news.
Yeah. I actually don't think most people know my background. I don't think I even did an intro on the podcast before. But the weird thing is, I was in the mid-2000s, I was a Flash developer. That's how I got my start. As an indie Flash developer on Newgrounds and E-Bombs world. That's how you get your start in the games industry.
And now you've been tossed around by every publisher in the free world,
Just
it seems.
thrown to the wolves. It was good. It's good.
Can you say where you're at now?
No, I will in the fall.
Okay.
So just to keep everyone in suspense. And I'm sure Phil will just poke at it, like try to slip in little cues throughout this entire episode. Yeah.
Well, we all know that he did go to Bungie, and he was locked to a radiator in the basement for the last few years, unable to do any type of podcasting for the fear of the PR henchman there. So hopefully with the new spot, he'll be less restrictive.
Yeah, now that you're free, what's the hottest take you've had listening to the cast? What you got on tap? What have you been holding in, internalizing? Helldivers, the finals?
You'll hear it through the episodes. No, we're covering stuff like Newzoo. We're talking about Black Myth, and I think we're talking about things like Stormgate. So yeah, there's a ton of learnings from PC console, and I have like one built-in burning, which is just how live services launch on PC console and like how highly risky it is versus what we have on mobile.
And just since you're coming back, you're a product guy, right? Or game design? Like, what's your discipline?
Like my background was programming, but like I went through economy design and then was product lead for a while. Let's go with product. Yeah, let's say product.
Stuff in the court.
Yeah.
Balance is changing.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Core packing.
All right, there's two of you against Cress and I. All right, we're going to have to fight. It'll be fun. All right. So, Phil, you have some shilling you want to do?
Yeah, last week, Mishka and I were at the Play Ventures Summit, and they also gave me sweet swag. They gave me this hat. Awesome event. Incredible job by the Play Ventures team. Derule showed up. If you don't know Derule, Sandstorm, I'm sure you've heard it. Yeah, it was great. It was great. I wish the Finns, I wish their hips would move a little bit more, but that was fucking fantastic. People are taking selfies with him. He's Finnish. He's Finnish. It's like, what are you doing on a Wednesday night? Come hang out and DJ for us. We also did sauna, of course. And the thing I love about the Finns is it's not a sauna. It's not the sauna. You just do sauna. I feel like it has like a capital S. It's an institution. That was a bunch of fun. The Play Venture staff was fantastic. They spent a lot of time trying to connect their portfolio companies together. I got to talk to a bunch of the portfolio companies. They were working the floors. They're out there earning that paycheck, earning that brand name, connecting people together. That was really cool to see. The other thing I was encouraged by is I've always wanted to put a digital chocolate podcast together. If you're not familiar with digital chocolate, this was like the PayPal mafia of games, which very few people have talked about. And I got a bunch of inside info about this. I think I talked to like 5X digital chocolate employees, but Rovio, Supercell, like all of these companies have roots back to digital chocolate. Trip Hawkins, of course. There's so many cool storylines. I would love to cover this in the future. And I would say just coming out of the talks and talking to a bunch of different companies, same thing we've been talking about on this podcast. We talked about a couple episodes ago, distribution. Everyone is trying to figure out the angle of attack to get their games into the hands of players, whether that be messaging apps, which we haven't talked a lot about on Telegram, whether that be brand marketing, thinking about, hey, how can you create really high quality narrative and story? Web3 always hangs around. And then, hey, how could we build more innovative ad platforms? So like the theme is the same. Distribution.
Dude, I've been going deep into these rewards programs, Offerwall 2.0, Misplay, and all these other ones. And that's really fascinating space. I think it's definitely something that's kind of up and coming.
Yeah, there's also the Epic Store that just launched. Actually, in the US, I was able to, I have a Pixel, so I downloaded the Epic Store on my Pixel and was going to play Fall Guys, but it took like 15 minutes to download. So of course I never opened it because, you set it aside and you forget. But that's coming up now, and who knows what's going to happen there with the, what does Tim say, 15 steps that you have to go through to download these things. I'm not sure it's quite that bad, although I couldn't do it on my iOS because I'm US based. So you can download the Epic Store on iOS in Europe.
I think the main storyline there is honestly what it does to Fortnite DAU numbers. Like, again, we talk about it. Fortnite needs to grow. It is desperate to grow. And before they yanked it, mobile was doing a pretty significant portion of DAU for Fortnite. And so by yanking this, Tim really hampered Fortnite's ability to compete in the UGC wars. And this is another moment for them to see if they can't, gain back some territory.
Got it. So 1 week since we've had a correction, nothing to correct, everybody? Super smart?
Perfect.
Absolutely
perfect.
Oh, it's unique for us. Okay. So let's go into a couple headlines. So Gamescom is going on right now. Mishka is there. And here is what I'm taking away from the opening night live. So Jeff Keighley, now he's just the ambassador for games at all of these different events. So there's Summer Game Fest, opening night live, and then the Game Awards, which happens. So Cress, World of Warcraft, The War Within will have early access beta in 2 days. Are you going to see your family when this opens up?
Wait. No, it's early access in 2 days. Like it's the actual launch in 2 days for early access, not beta. But yes, dude, I've cleared the decks. I will not be reachable. Don't even bother calling me. It has been like crack addict type shit. I have like 8 level, 70 characters all decked out in the best gear. And I'm ready. And of course, all I'm going to do is play one of them. So it's like, I don't know what I was thinking. I just got, as I said, I got really into it. So I'm really excited. Looks like it's going to be a good expansion.
All right. Let's see. Borderlands 4 had this announcement trailer that was kind of weird. It didn't feel like Borderlands to me. And then also a lot of people were in our Slack channel were talking about how there was an apparent lack of marketing sites. So typically, when you spend all the money to get onto these events, you want to at least have a place for players to go as a call to action. And I think the call to action on the trailer was go wishlist now. And apparently at the time, the Steam page wasn't up in time for it to collect those wish lists. So a little bit of a marketing fail. But one thing that was interesting when I checked Google Trends in the US, it was a top 10 trending topic. JLo, of course, wins out and had 10x more searches than that.
Okay, just to be clear, Randy Pitchford is notorious for overpromising and under-delivering. The chance of this thing coming out next year in 2025 is slim to none, just to be clear. And particularly when they come out with this kind of marketing, with no marketing, basically. They don't even have a splash page or a website. I mean, it's obscene, right? It's actually helping Take-Two stock, which is good for me generally, but because I'm bullish on Take-Two, but it's I'll believe it when I see it. How about that?
Got it. Marvel Rivals is going to launch December 6th, so I think it's a little earlier than anticipated. Genshin is coming to Xbox on November 20th. Is this the first of the MiHoYo games on Xbox? I think they're on PlayStation, all of the MiHoYo.
Correct.
Okay, it's the first one?
Yep.
Yeah, who cares? Honestly. Not material.
Oh,
Microsoft's way too slow on this shit, right?
no, for sure. Anything else from opening night live that you guys thought was interesting? That was my take. I mean, there's a ton of stuff, but
the other one was the Indiana Jones thing, right? That they announced that it would be coming to PlayStation 5, I think about 4 months after launch. So obviously we've already covered things like the cross-platform strategy for Microsoft, but now that finalizes it, all those rumors were true.
Oh, I didn't even see that. That's horrific. Absolutely horrific. Really?
Yeah.
So Gamescom is a little bit of a disappointment this year because the biggest platforms in Europe are not there, right? So if Nintendo and Sony are not at Gamescom, those are the platforms that matter, right? So it's seemingly going the way of E3, except that I think Gamescom is a better consumer show, but it's a bad look that only Xbox is there and they have absolutely zero share in Europe, continental Europe. So it's why is even Xbox even there? So they're doing their best, I suppose.
I guess they're trying. Yeah, they have a bunch of streams. I think I saw the next 3 days they have streams every day or something like that. I don't know.
I don't know. There's I felt like there's a bunch of shit that got announced. King of Meat, which is a game I worked on for Amazon Game Studios, finally got announced. Really excited for them to knock it out of the park. Was it Inzoi? This is the South Korean Sims challenger we've been following, Eric, for a little bit. That got a new trailer. I'm really excited to see where that shows up. That looks utterly ridiculous. I don't know. I felt like there was quite a bit. Borderlands we just talked about. Call of Duty showed up. Call of Duty 6. I mean, these are huge titles. Goat Simulator Remastered. I mean, let's...
Gonna give it a solid.
Wait, you're joking,
we're talking
right?
about large titles here, right?
You're talking about Inzoi? Wait, what the fuck are we talking? Amazon, the 8th MMO from Amazon?
Okay, hold up.
You can't say that shit with a straight face, Phil.
No, I was I couldn't tell. I'm he's joking, right? He's saying this. All right, so we'll get more into games later, including Black Myth, which actually had a pretty cool trailer as well. So just a quick ad update. Something was really interesting about Roblox that came out. They just launched search ads. So, of course, this is only for 13 plus, and this launched last week on August 14th. So the idea of this, it's similar to Google search or ASA, Apple search ads. So search ads currently work for exact match versus a broad match. So which means that they're going to show you ads for your search terms that have the exact spelling as the keyword that you bid on. So you have to be pretty particular. So the ad system is going to prioritize ads that are the most compelling and relevant for a user and their search query. This is likely a big game changer for discovery on Roblox. So discovery is a pain in the ass. It's usually top charts. This is the first time that you're going to be able to really kind of game the system in terms of search. But Phil, you don't agree?
No, I kind of poo-poo this. Search is just not a big part of Roblox discovery. There just isn't a lot of intent. That's usually not how players discover games on the platform. And I had a trusted source to suggest to me that it's really only around 5% of visits are from searches, with the remaining from what your friends are playing and the algorithm. So it doesn't look like this type of feature has a lot of leverage. I'm still waiting to see how the in-world portals perform. So if you remember, they announced an ad unit where if you're in a particular playground or experience, you can go through a portal that connects to another experience in a 3D world. That to me is a really interesting ad unit. I'd love to hear more about how that's performing, but I don't think search is going to get them over the hump or solve some of the acquisition problems on the platform.
Okay. I think it's a long-term bet, but we'll see. So staying on the ads train, AppsFlyer has also a new free report. There were so many reports this last week. So in their report, they actually contradicted the Singular report on CPIs, and I covered that last week. So from AppsFlyer, CPIs jumped almost 50% on Android as iOS saw a 17% drop. So Singular actually had a little bit of the reverse on that, ironically. So from Q1 23 to Q2 24, iOS CPI dropped significantly, signaling increased market efficiency and improved ad targeting. iOS CPI was still 3.5 times higher than Android on average. Their global averages were actually a lot higher than what Singular had. So it might just be the countries that they're using. So iOS was, $5.46 to Android's $2.17. And that's a global average across all genres. Obviously, as you break out genres, you get into much different prices. So, and the report doesn't break that out.
Yeah, ironically, I've been using both these guys to help me out, kind of triangulate this for a client. And I didn't see much differences between them, but my cuts were a little bit more granular. So I think we're probably comparing apples to oranges.
I think that's the challenge, is as a high level takeaway, when they aggregate everything, it comes out a little bit differently. And then when you get in the weeds, when you go look at different genres and different countries, I think that's where it kind of evens out. Yeah,
you just got to tier 1 English countries. That's the combination. That's what matters, and you got to really just focus on those. That's what my
I know they give me. The report has global averages, which is
global averages are
which is
fucking
irrelevant. Yeah, I know, and I just try to go for trends. But I know that in the Apps Flyer online report, you can, I think, select by country, which was more than the Singular report. I think just had global. So check out the Apps Flyer one. Okay, let's go to investments in M&A.
Gerard Griffin is joining Supercell as a new CFO. That's kind of a big news because Gerard has been, he was at EA when I was there. He's been here around forever, and he was the CFO of Zynga for a while. Made his gajillions, right, at Zynga, and now is moving over to Supercell. Friend of the cast, Mr. Canterman from Joe Kim's Pixels and Profit, which I listen to all the time.
It's really good.
They seem to be up to something. Yeah, it is pretty good. Like Pixels and Profit in particular. Those guys are all really, really fucking smart. But given his experience, they basically are saying the same thing I am. Given his experience, is it seems very likely that they're on the path of doing an IPO prep, because that's why you would hire someone like Gerard, right? Because there's no reason for Gerard to go to another private company unless they're going public, because he's too big for that, Certainly you don't hire him if you're going to get sold, which has been somewhat rumored by people like Mishka. Yeah, you don't need a publicly traded CFO to get sold. Any schmuck can do that. So anyway, looks like something's going on. Something's going on at Supercell.
Interesting. Let's keep an eye on that.
Yeah, there's also a reorg at Riot. They consolidated publishing and esports under the esports leader, John Needham, who is promoted to president. They've introduced 2 new studios to oversee television, film, and development projects. One studio will focus on animation. The other will do live action. A guy named Brian Wright. That's interesting. I have no real insights into what's happening over at Riot, but yeah, anybody got anything on that?
With the success of Arcane, which actually I think Arcane...
Whoa. What success? They just announced that the second season's the last season.
Because it's so expensive. It's so expensive.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's the point.
Yeah, don't get...
Well, okay. All right. Let me define success.
Wait. Hold on. We just said last week transmedia is dead, right? Borderlands, and it's over. No. We don't need to talk about it anymore.
I'm gonna reach through the video and smack you in the head. All right. I can't say those things anymore. No, it's not dead. So when I say success of Arcane, it was critically acclaimed. Players love it. It is not I would probably say it's not a financial success. It's Fortige is the animation studio, and it's insanely expensive. So while it is lovely for the brand and the halo and all of those things, you just cannot pour that money into it. That's my guess as to why it's going to end at season 2. And then clearly they're creating 2 new business units, live action and animation, to do more of this, probably in a more business-minded and profitable way. So I think they are seeing that this can help. Listen, they have to figure out, the League of Legends audience is aging. They got to figure out how they attract new people. And perhaps one of the ways they're looking to do is through entertainment. I don't know.
Are you even listening to yourself? Did you just hear what you just said? You said they're discontinuing this game because it's
the show
too expensive and unprofitable and not leading to more revenue for the franchise, right? So it's why would you keep doing that, right? Why would you keep banging your head against the wall with transmedia bullshit?
No,
if it's too expensive and it's not doing enough to justify its existence in terms of making the game itself more profitable, right?
You can make media and transmedia profitable if you do it and actually spend the right amount of money on it. They basically were creating the highest quality animation as a series and just giving it to Netflix because quality has always mattered to Riot above everything else.
Do you mean just like straight licensing and just watching for uplift in your KPIs based on that? Like Fallout? Why was Riot spending money on a TV show that benefited Netflix?
That was the way that they thought back then. Their marketing trailers were millions and millions of dollars. They are love letters to the players. They had so much money, they didn't care. Now they're getting to the point where they're like, oh shit, we actually have to like pay attention to how much we're spending.
Okay. You're killing me here, Jen. You're killing me here because you're basically, you're proving exactly what I've been saying all along. Like, if you have to spend gajillions of dollars on fucking bullshit that is beautiful and amazing, but it doesn't do anything for your franchise, how does that make it work? It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. I'm telling you.
And now you're pulling it back and you're going to create a bunch of shit. Like, just what Adam said, fucking license this shit out to people that know what they're doing and let them deal with the P&L, right? Then maybe you can get some overhang, but building this shit out yourself makes no fucking sense at all.
I am just explaining to you where Riot was coming
from. You're justifying it. No, you're not explaining, you're justifying. It's driving me insane. I'm going to scream in a minute. Stop. Dude, it's a stupid waste of money because it didn't help the franchise enough to justify it, period.
I feel like we need like a transmedia coliseum just to battle out specific podcast on transmedia. But yeah, this again will just spiral for another.
We can get where that ET,
we'll franchise the transmedia
ET game
podcast.
pit. We can battle it out there in Nevada.
Yeah. Atari ET, yes. Let's
start talking about games.
There has been an announcement that Age of Empires Mobile is launching globally on October 17th. Now, normally I wouldn't cover this because it's not significant enough, but the thing is, this is from Timmy. Timmy was actually on this, and I've been trying to figure out what this game is. It has only had about a month in soft launch in the Philippines. It is 4X. This is not RTS. We're not going back to Command & Conquer's thesis. The other thing that's really interesting is that Tencent, via Level Infinite, which is one of their other studios, is also working on a 4X Command & Conquer game called Command & Conquer Legions. This is interesting. I'm not quite sure what they see in these IPs. They're HD IPs. I feel like HD IPs have really struggled on mobile to get organic traffic. I think that was really the story of Command & Conquer's RTS. I'm not quite sure what they see here other than 4X is really hot, as we were talking about last week and the week beforehand. 4X is really hot, so I guess this is maybe just more coal into that fire.
That's my bet. This is just, how do we take any IP and give us any leverage in the 4X space?
Yep, that makes sense.
That's it.
But yeah, the problem with that though is that the Age of Empires people just fucking hate the mechanics associated with like 4X games on mobile. You know, it's like kind of a mismatch.
No, it's more about finding your niche and sticking with it, right? Like finding that small group of players that you can be able to stick with for a while. Looking at the broader audience who has ever played Age of Empires is not the predictor for this.
Yeah.
So an update on Zenless Zone Zero. So it's been a little while since this game launched. Ethan challenged me a little beforehand when I had some depression in my voice talking about the game's numbers, despite the fact that on a nominal basis, it's grossed quite a bit of money. But when we start to look at the cannibalization questions and start to look at what Zenless Zone Zero has done to MiHoYo's portfolio, about 2 months after launch, it's not that impressive. It is only around 11% of portfolio DAU is coming from this title. And when we abstract it out a little bit and we look at total portfolio DAU, we blend all of these things together, it only looks like there was a very small bump during Zenless Zone Zero's launch and that it's returned to its baseline. So it looks like this is not additive to MiHoYo's portfolio, which is troubling for a game that seems to have cost so much money. So much money, and is rumored to have a very large marketing budget, similar to Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact.
Yeah, I just looked at T1, channeling Cress, who's like, hey, I only care about that. I don't know if you did T1 or worldwide, but basically I saw the same thing, right? MiHoYo doesn't appear to be doing better when they just had 2 games. And so this is the numbers kind of stacking. Purple, is Genshin, I think, and green is Endless Zone Zero. The thing that I noticed that was a little bit interesting is on the next chart, like I pulled them apart and just showed them kind of separately. And I do think that they do something smart, which is that they stagger any of the updates, right? So peaks come from any update that they do. And between the 3 games, they must be on some sort of like death march to make sure that any update doesn't launch within the close window to the other game. And so you can start to see like the multiple peaks that are coming once all 3 games are live, but all of the peaks are smaller now than they were in the past. And so to me, that says cannibalization is a thing. It says, are they finally hitting a wall with their strategy? Their strategy is, hey, we have the same overarching meta system, the way that gacha works, the way that the meta system works, and we're changing a little bit about the gameplay, whether it's, full squad battle or some of the other features that they have. Have they hit a limit? What do you guys think?
This is like a case study for business school for cannibalization. Like, it is crazy. It's like a poster child. It's not great, right? I don't think.
It's so weird because it's hitting a different genre too, Eric. Like, I thought this would move a little bit away from the other mechanic. One was turn-based, one's real-time.
Yeah, and you know what? The only data point that's really contradicting my whole kind of thesis on this is the one that we were looking at before, where it showed that the user base actually doubled with the second game, and now I'm starting to really question whether that's true, because it feels like it's the same fucking players going from one game to the other. It doesn't seem like they're expanding the player base at all, even though the data suggests otherwise.
So the data is saying that the DAU is actually stacking with this, but the revenue is not?
For the second game, yes, right?
Yeah. So like in theory, they've grown the audience, but the population is just not spending as much? Because there is other things that can drive cannibalization looks, including things like diverting marketing spend and diverting resources, right?
So you can have the same marketing budget chasing 3 games instead of 2. So like, there's a counterfactual that each one would have declined. It's compensating differentials.
Look at me, just like throwing crazy shit into this podcast.
Well,
Welcome back.
I don't know if we know.
I am incredibly... I don't think we really know based on the surface level data we can get from Sensor Tower. But like, it is concerning as a portfolio that you go from 2 to 3 and you hit the same amount of revenue, especially given the new game is pretty substantially different than the previous 2.
Yeah. Again, it feels like the audience is moving from one to the other and not expanding the audience. So what I was thinking about, like, is that maybe they need to actually build a game with a license to attract a broader audience, right? Because these are relatively small download numbers, particularly in tier 1 English countries.
We covered this, I think, a couple of weeks ago, that they've applied for a license for an Animal Crossing type game as their next iteration. So that is going to be their biggest separation from these kind of combat-focused
that makes sense.
RPGs. And that one I'd bet big on. I think they've got stuff up their sleeve.
My whole premise here is that the mechanic itself that they are building is actually perfect for mobile. Like, it is really, really well designed. Like, collection mechanics, upgrade Evo, like, that's like fucking gold,
Do you know what they're doing on PC console? Is that a significant portion?
I was just going to bring that up, which is PC and console aren't featured here, right? This is just mobile.
I know. I've heard specifically that the PlayStation in particular is terrible. Like, it's not meaningful. But my information is really old, so if anybody knows, let me know.
Okay.
And I don't know anything about PC.
Okay. Well, what else we got? AFK Journey?
Yes. So AFK Journey, remember we were covering it when it launched in the United States almost a couple months ago, back in April, but it had not launched in China. It's finally launched in China, so we have a chance to check back in on how this game is doing from developer Lilith, who has actually been killing it really in 4x more than anything else. And so when you look at the daily active users for the China launch, and this was at the beginning of August, it hit a peak DAU according to Sensor Tower estimates. And again, just to clarify here, I'm only looking at iOS, and I'm only looking at US and China here for comparisons, just because it's hard to track Android in China, and it's much easier to do iOS because it runs through a single app store. So if we just look at iOS between the United States and China, in China, it hit a peak DAU of around 800,000, whereas in the United States, it never really exceeded 150,000 DAU. So you're looking at like maybe 5x, 8x the scale of launch in China versus the United States. But when you start to look at the cumulative revenue, you can kind of see that scale impact, how much money they've made. In terms of cumulative revenue, it's been a very, very big launch. It's almost equal to where the United States is in terms of cumulative revenue. So the United States is sitting about 16 cumulative revenue earned, whereas in China, after about a month, they're already past, it looks like 11 to 12 million. But the thing that is troubling right now is that when you look at revenue per download for both the United States and China, they roughly track with one another. China's a little bit lower. Now, normally that would be impressive because they've added so much more scale and they've been able to maintain revenue per download. They have these constant returns to scale, which are normally exciting to see. But the problem is it's still just not enough. It's still just not enough. I still spell high trouble for this game. Let's see whether or not they abandon it after a year. There was that interview with one of their developers, I believe it was in Pocket Gamer, where he talks about sticking with games. That's Lilith's strategy. They've sticked with Dislight for quite some time. If you remember, that was their hip hop collection squad RPG that never really did much. So let's see whether or not they stick around with this one. But I'm starting to think this might be a lost cause.
Step into the future of game monetization with Xsolla, the premier partner for game developers seeking to expand their reach and revenue. Xsolla provides a robust suite of tools designed to enhance user acquisition, manage subscriptions, and streamline payment solutions worldwide. Unlock new markets and maximize profitability through their customized, secure payment architecture and dedicated support team. Xsolla, powering game developers to achieve global success.
This podcast is brought to you by Data.ai. Now, you're asking, didn't they get acquired by Sensor Tower? They did, and that's awesome. Here's why. Whether you loved using Data.ai or Sensor Tower, the combined company will offer customers even stronger and more detailed insights on the full digital customer journey. Exciting times lie ahead as Sensor Tower and Data.ai join forces. Go to Data.ai or SensorTower.com and get on board with undeniably the best data partner in the business. Now, back to the episode.
Okay, let's get into Stormgate. So Stormgate, if you remember, is the spiritual successor to StarCraft 2. It's built by the ex-Blizzard team, and it was finally released. Unfortunately, the launch numbers have just come in, and they're not great. It peaked at about 4.5K CCU.
Can you repeat that again?
Roughly 50%.
How much?
4.5K. Yeah.
So like you and a couple buddies logged in to play, is that? Was it early access or did it launch?
It's early access, but we should get into this. This is one of the things, which is early access is your launch, right? Like you look at something like a Pal World and they're not going to get that peak again, what they got in January. Early access, you need to come out strong. It's the same thing with even Hades 2, and you look at their curve. Their early access is their launch. So unfortunately, the 4.5K CCU, which is extremely low for a free-to-play game on Steam, came in extremely low. It's going to be a really large struggle for them to reach the scale that they wanted to hit. What's been incredibly odd about this is that I think when we're comparing this against the story of like Black Myth, where wishlist, this was one of the most wishlisted games on Steam, a ton of hype, a ton of growth on this.
500,000.
There's a
Holy shit.
Yeah, there's a news article from like 500,000 in February 2024, and that's against like Black Myth's like 650K that I've seen. But you're showing some of the numbers from like VGI. I don't know. Like I'd have to double check some of these numbers. VGI, you got to fix your y-axis. Like, come on, man. 0 y-axis. Like what? No, don't do this. But anyways, it says that right now it's roughly about 500K wishlist, which I don't really agree with because there's so much dissonance here between the number of wishlists and the number of people playing this game. And in terms of digging into the response, the reviews are pointing that this is just feeling like it's too early for early access, where the visuals, campaign, sounds are all pretty rough, especially around the edges. And the community is speculating that this is because they were running out of money from both their VC investment, roughly 35 million, and their Kickstarter campaigns. On top of, they've been doing a lot of sort of squirrely walk back of comms, where promises made during Kickstarter were then adjusted, the wording for things like content offered, and driving players to be upset about sort of day one DLC offered in the game. Overall, my takeaways here is that this just showcases kind of 3 key perils. Like one is the perils of kickstarting your game mixed with VC backing. Also the perils of launching too early in early access when this is effectively your launch. And lastly, the perils of a Blizzard team with a significantly smaller team trying to match player expectations against StarCraft 2 and what that product is currently offering. But in general, what I'm seeing is like, it is really odd to me. This level of mixed sentiment typically doesn't drive this much impact on player count. That wish list ratio to first day CCU is such a crazy outlier in this game, which I'd love to dig into. Because I think for Jen, I think it's even talking through like marketing KPIs, like why did Borderlands push people to wish lists? Is wish list the new big KPI pre-launch to drive your go-to-market strategy? Or is followers, or is pre-orders? And my sense is right now, like wish list has been hyped up as the right KPI for driving go-to-market and pre-launch success. But this type of ratio is insane to me. Doesn't show a strong predictor of launch success. Does that make sense?
GameDiscover.co does this great Steam-based email where they talk about wish lists are in fact the new KPI on Steam, on PC, and that there is a conversion rate that you can expect from wish list to download, and I think it's like 20 or 30%. I actually have to go look that up while, when Phil's talking, I'll go see if I can pull that up. But at least it is driving you to something. It's kind of like a pre-registration, which is a whole other topic that Phil loves to talk about conversion from pre-reg to an actual download. But this at least is, from a marketing perspective, a way to drive people to do something. Now, you're right. I don't know what's going on in this particular case. And should they have done a closed beta, a closed alpha versus early access? I think the answer is clearly yes. Is they weren't ready.
They did it, and there was a closed beta earlier in the year. There was a ton of feedback already at that point.
But wouldn't the numbers have told them, I don't know, why would you continue to? I mean, the only reason I guess is if you are running out of money, I guess you throw it at the wall and see if you can get something back. I don't know. Phil, what do you think?
Well, I first want to defend the wish lists. So the wish lists were actually, I believe, the 500,000 wish lists were actually reported when they did a fundraising round. So I believe there's a first-party source for that. We can double-check on that next week. If that number really is true, 500,000 wish lists, and they were only able to get to 4,000 peak CCU, and this is a free-to-play game, that is like an unmitigated disaster of epic proportions that we should study. And again, I feel bad for the team. Tim seems like a great CEO. So I'd love to check on that. I think the other thing that's interesting here is that they launched as a paid SKU to begin with for early access. So you could basically, I think, pre-purchase some of the DLC, and that would get you in a couple days early before they went free to play. And so I wonder what happened when you wishlist the game, what you were notified. So you could have sent a notification out to 500,000 people when the game was paid versus when it was free to play. So that might have been a miss. But even then, I still just can't fathom that a game that had this much groundswell before it was only able to do 4,000 CCU. It just doesn't pass the sniff test, despite the fact this is first-party CCU. We know this is right. This is reported by Valve. Putting all that aside, the writing's been on the wall forever. The writing's been on the wall forever. I mean, Company Heroes 3, Age of Empires 4, these are the most recent RTSs. This is dead. It's gone. It's gone. It's not coming back. And I think it's very hard to get out of those genre constraints.
Yeah, as somebody who worked on sales and first party on Valve, it really did strike me as really, really convoluted and complex how they set up their free-to-play base, going from a early access pack paid only to free to play in such quick order, and now switching to a free to play base with these. I understood why they came with this, saying hey, we have the expectations of StarCraft. We need to kind of follow through. But I think all of this would have actually been significantly simpler if they literally just went with a basic premium game with 3 tiers of SKU strategy, cleaned up all the comms, and even on first party, the purchase paths would have been significantly simpler. I tried to even purchase the game on startup here and trying to figure out what are the additions, what can I buy? And first parties are set up to do this when you sell as a premium game.
I spoke to him on a podcast a couple of years ago, and I was, for a niche game like this, which real-time strategy unfortunately is now a niche game on PC, much to my chagrin. But point is, should have been a premium SKU from the get-go, right? The fundamental problem with the game now that I can see is that the quality is not there. I assumed that the quality was going to be there, but it evidently is not. It's not a finished product by many of the reviewers and even the faithful, right? So,
yeah, that's the unfortunate part. And I think they can get there, but the difficulty here is you've kind of lost your launch window. If I compare mobile to PC console, the impact and the window of that launch really sets up your trajectory. So getting this back to where it needs to be will be an incredibly uphill challenge for this team. I would love to have him on the podcast talking through those ratios, because I think especially in the case of like Black Myth and now Stormgate, two kind of opposite ends of the spectrum, talking through that data point.
Cool.
Anyways, let's move forward with PC console games. So there are a ton of interesting games now launching. So we're going to try to like chop this up over the next while so we can kind of dive in deep, especially Phil and I, on some of these games. But the rush, hasn't really slowed for live services. And I think on the Newzoo report, they talked a lot about the bearishness, the bleakness of launching free-to-play on PC console these days. But shining light here would be Valorant console. So it went to open beta. And on the Circana leaderboards here, you can watch it being tracked roughly at rank 8 on PlayStation and rank 7 on Xbox. The thing that we're watching here is stability. So Phil, in terms of like the numbers here, I haven't used Circana, so I'm not sure exactly how to translate this. How does this look versus other PC console launches?
I think we still need more time. I mean, the best we can do is really track stability, but I've seen a lot of new games come on to the Circana charts at these ranks and then just slip. I mean, the First Descendant is another example of a game that came on here and just like wasn't sticky enough. Helldivers has stuck on PC, but like slipped on both of the consoles. The other thing to keep in mind, this is US only, which I think gives you another peek into like US interests for something like The Descendant, which was an Eastern looter shooter, which I think was another interesting thing to come out of this. So I would say like I'm definitely working on trying to like get some more long run time series on ranks so we can pair it against something like the finals. But I would say by and large, like it got into the charts. It's a game that's been out for a while and got into the charts on console, and that's something to be proud of. Let's just see if it can maintain. Like that's how this thing wins. The other thing that I think is really interesting is Circana has also released the July rankings for the US top 20 best-selling games, and EA Sports College Football 25 is on there. This is the franchise that EA has revived. This is the first year. I think I forget how long the drought has been, but not only has it done really well, Andrew Wilson called it out in their quarterly earnings report. It was doing around 1.8 million uniques in its first week if you subtract out the trial players they cited. But the other thing that's really exciting here is that they have this EA MVP Sports bundle, which is number 2 in the July sales. So this was Madden and EA College Football being combined into one SKU for a price increase, which is a brilliant spell of marketing strategy, and it feels like the obvious play, but sometimes these things can get drowned out in large corporations. So like props to the EA team for executing against this, and it looks like the proof is in the pudding. It charted by itself, and EA's College Sports is on a separate line item. So it holds both the number 1 and the number 2 spots.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Super smart. Yeah. It's the first time that it's been back because the NCAA finally put through the rule that college athletes get reimbursed for their likeness. So I've read a little bit that, some of these athletes get like $500 or something like that from what this is. So, but the good news is that the SKU is back and they get a little bit of a reimbursement. I don't think it's tied to engagement or anything like that. So if you're like a more popular athlete, I don't know if you get more or not, unless you negotiate that.
The reason that the game was canceled 10 years ago was because they got a class action lawsuit against them by players in college, right? So it became insane. But now they've consolidated the rights for NCAA players, and now they can license it legally.
Correct. That's why it's back, is this change in the ruling, which looks to be great, to actually get players something they deserve.
No, well, that's debatable.
Well, yeah, like I said, it's $500 is worth it, but
no, it's more of a political thing. But like, is it good for the sport? Is it good for how the players?
Correct. Yes, got it.
Navigate the sport.
All right, what else we got?
Yeah, so I wanted to cover First Descendant and Once Human. So these are both PvE live service looter shooters. Phil just mentioned about First Descendant here. Both actually started pretty strong. I've comped these both to the finals launch on Steam, but First Descendant looks like it's nearly in line with finals CCUDK, and we kind of know where that trajectory ends up in terms of finals. Versus Once Human, actually, interestingly, has been able to sustain significantly better. And so I'm looking at things like Once Human, and what's been interesting is like the two approaches in terms of Once Human and First Descendant were almost like polar opposites about what they get right and what they get wrong about the PvE shooter space.
It's just looking at PC. Is this merger with console?
Yeah, this is just peak CCU for Steam.
Okay, because the only reason is that it's interesting to see the first Descendant has still charted on console US for both Xbox and PlayStation, but seems to have a much worse trajectory on PC.
I prefer to use CCU and DAO, right? Like the Circana ratings are just going to wash out any sort of learnings about retention, especially because every game's going to be fluctuating.
That's fair enough.
And not to mention, this is period. There's like no games coming out. So like June, July, August, it's all Madden and NCAA now. But the Circana charts are relevant, right?
Yep. And then the last one that I want to talk about was Deadlock. So an unannounced game from Valve in closed beta, but the game has already surpassed 40K CCU. It has been growing throughout the beta, which has been insane, which is crazy. Like, it doesn't even have a store page. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been announced. And the only way to get to the beta is if you know someone that has already been invited. So proving yet again that Valve can do whatever the hell they want and reach scale. Like, they just have such a baked-in advantage of being able to build this out. Phil, you've actually been able to play this game. I'm
knee deep. This is not good. I'm knee deep in this game. Like 80 hours in already. 3 a.m. I just like that one more match feeling. I hate how fucking good Valve is at making games. Like, it's not just the core gameplay that they get right here. It's also the IP. It's got this steampunk IP that they execute to a really high level. And remember, Eric, we've kind of like shit on Valve as like being a research institution previously. And, as we'll talk about with Black Myth, but also with this game, it's just incredible to me that they can have this game under development. It was only like 183 developers, and they're split between TFT, Dota, CSGO. So there's all these things that Valve is split between, including the platform. And yet, even with that headcount, they're able to ship a game like this. Ugh. Now, I don't know. Like, they've definitely been spending way too much time in MOBAs. Like, I mean, that's what Gabe is always rumored to do, is just play Dota at his office all day. He's been kind of like disconnected from the company. But, I can't help myself. Like, this is good. This is a good game. I don't know what else to say.
What is it exactly?
It's similar to Paladins, it's a third person action MOBA. I mean, you could also compare it to Smite too. It kind of fits somewhere in between there. There are creeps. There is in-round progression. So we've seen like a smaller implementation of this thesis, but it's so much better than those games for a variety of reasons we could talk about.
It seems a little bit niche, but it
40K CCU on a beta is not bad though, right? Like, when you control the spigot, you cannot count Valve out. This is probably going to grow.
We should take a rain check to discuss the distribution strategy with how Steam did it, how they did it with Deadlock, and then how Stormgate did it. Yeah. I think there's a contrast in a story that would be very interesting.
Correct. Although Valve owns the distribution channel on that, and so they can.
Valve's cheating.
That's true.
Valve's cheating.
Well, why can't you employ that same
strategy? And also, one is a launch versus one is a beta, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe they do Deadlock where like eventually it just rolls into an open beta and then rolls into a launch, like Valorant did. That's a viable strategy for testing out retention and growing over time. But in the case of Stormgate, they did this closed beta. They launched. That was their launch strategy.
Speaking of launch strategies, this thing is cooking. Black Myth Wukong now has the second highest PCU on Steam of all time, peak PSU. So it got to 2.3 million peak PSU. That is enough for second place. PUBG back in, I think it was 2017, did 3.3 million. That's never going to be surpassed in my book. They did it as a paid game too. So Black Myth Wukong has surpassed Palworld. It's above Counter-Strike 2. It's above Lost Ark. It's above Dota. It is absolutely fucking killing it right now.
I've heard very specifically like 80% of that 2 million concurrent is in China.
Yes.
Right. And it is at a lower price point, around $35 US. It was delayed on the Xbox Series X for weird reasons. I don't know. I guess they just didn't get the cert or whatever. But it seems to be playing well on PS5. So I'll be curious to see how well it does on console. It's like a false flag when something is doing really well in China that is a Chinese developer, that is a Chinese theme. Like, is that replicable is from a US perspective? And that's what the danger and the risk is associating success with something like Black Myth. Having said that, these are real units. It's doing well. The game is amazing. It's a real testimony to the fact that Chinese game developers are coming to AAA, and that's kind of the real story. Yeah. But it still needs to do well in the West to be a legitimate competitor. So it has to do well on console.
I think that is the exact wrong takeaway to have from this. I don't think. I think that's the exact wrong takeaway to have for this. When you look into Game Science's origin, one of the things that they said when they pivoted away from the 2 mobile games they had produced into making Black with Wukong, and I think this was back in 2018, 2017, they said that the insight came from realizing that Steam has more users who are in China than users that are in the United States. And Eric, you've been talking about this. This is one of the things that's been responsible for Steam's growth over the last 5 years, has been the massive increase in Chinese.
It's the only thing. But it's the only thing.
That's still like a very valid insight. And that to me is the story here, is that Steam has like somehow gained control of distribution, of game PC distribution in China. So there's one more platform that this came out on that we're not seeing, which is Tencent's gaming distribution platform called WeGame that also offer this game. And when you look at the MAU, they last reported it in 2020 or 2022, excuse me. It was around 70 million. And if you look at where Steam MAU is, it's around probably 150 to 200 million when you look at when they last reported it and kind of how they've grown since then. So Steam has like somehow reluctantly gained control of distribution in China. Like that's fucking incredible. That to me is the story, is that Steam has won in China. They beat Tencent at their own game.
No, the problem is that Steam is fucking illegal. It's not legally operating in China right now.
Even
it's
the more impressive, right?
This is the problem.
Even more impressive.
Well, I mean, yes and no. It could go away at any moment. You know what I mean? Like, and then what? Right. So that's my concern. Is it's borrowed time. You know, I'm shocked that they're still allowing it at this point. Literally, they could block it at any moment.
What's crazy to me is that Tencent wouldn't use their connections with inside of the government to block Steam. Like that's totally the gangster move. They're supposed to be gangsters, and yet like they haven't shown up with their guns yet. And Steam hasn't made like any effort to be in China, right? Have they done anything?
No.
They just win by ignorance. As always.
That's not true. I mean, I'm sure they beefed up the Hong Kong servers, right? But I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's a viable market. Just buyer beware, right? Like it could go away at any moment, you know? I just want to be clear here. This is really, really good for Western developers in general because they are selling more things on Steam. PC is a much more viable platform. And you make, you know, pure fucking margin on this shit, right? Because it's like after the 30%, it's like all PC margins. So this is good for them. I'm just saying that it's really fucking risky, you know, giving geopolitical shit going on. Fucking what could happen in China at any moment. And to your point, yeah, Tencent could go postal on them and get the CCP to get rid of it, this whole thing, you know, at any moment. So anyway.
Adam, let's talk a little bit more about Newzoo. I think you actually did a podcast with them that is going to come out soon.
Yeah, it's ready to go. So Newzoo's August 2024 report has come out. I want to touch base on some of the headline insights. So obviously there'll be a podcast which will go in detail with Devin Brennan, who's the senior analyst there, that goes through all the details. There was a number of good headlines, good takeaways and insights from the report. And I wanted to kind of single in on one in particular. So if they talked about things like PC market growth, they talked about things like the risk of live services on free-to-play PC console. They also talked about premium single-player games should be shorter in length. So I want to open up some debate on this specifically. So premium single-player games, as we know it, costs continue to explode, especially when it comes to recent leaks. Obviously, the cost is exploding. I think Spider-Man 2 was something like triple the dev budget of the previous one. AAA as a model is broken has been sort of a headline for over a decade at this point. And I think the data right now in terms of the market is showing that revenue has been roughly flat. There's clear player interest in these titles. This has been resilient through live services on PC console. It's just that this level of interest and spend has stayed flat, which is not growing in line with the costs, which are exploding. So what do you do if you're building single player games right now? So Newzoo's thesis, or they stipulate, it's the time to beat that's the culprit. That devs are bloating their playtime with content that players do not value, rather than delivering sort of a 20-hour golden path that would be sufficient for players spending $70. So my take here is that in the 2010s, there was a thesis that to reach kind of 10 million plus units, and you weren't COD or FIFA or first party, you're kind of in that like Skyrim and GTA 5 territory, that the mass market wants these massive open world games that roughly correlate game time to player value. And devs responded with games like Assassin's Creed, where they were exploding in scope, continually growing those open worlds, bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger maps. But then costs obviously exploded, creating bigger and bigger open world games that increased in fidelity that have been sort of stagnant in terms of performance. So my question here is culprit playtime? Because I think it's easy to point out at franchises like Assassin's Creed, but Assassin's Creed drives margins through DLC MTX, where lowered playtime means lowered outcomes because now fewer and fewer players are playing it. So are the cost savings worth actually losing that later revenue? Are the cost savings on all of those extraneous activities actually meaning that the lowered outcome is actually ROI positive? And my other question here is around, even with like the 20 hours, like 20-hour golden path, that's actually a massive golden path for many games. Like, for example, Spider-Man 2, which is the obvious recent example of very, very high dev costs, that was 18 hours for similar units outcome from Spider-Man 1. So could the game have been that much more affordable if they just cut out a bunch of the weird side activities? Or since those activities are actually mostly systemic within the engine, was the real culprit the 11 massive set-piece bosses that Spider-Man 2 had, right? Like, those were incredible bosses. That's what made the game so special. But then you're starting to think, like, what parts could we have cut from Spider-Man 2 that would have kept that same units outcome and then made the margins significantly better? That's, I think, the question that a lot of single-player devs have to ask themselves right now. What are the things you can cut from a single-player experience to make profitability? Is it playtime or is it the golden path? Eric?
I don't know what the answer here is, really, honestly, but I've heard these like kind of snippets of like God of War Ragnarok had 50 million in sales, but was unprofitable at Sony, which is crazy. You know, Spider-Man 2 similarly. But at $10 million, when you're generating like $400 to $500 million in revenue, if you can't make a profitable game, it's fucking scary. Or something like even Harry Potter at Hogwarts, which went years over budget, probably cost $400 or $500 million to get to market. If they didn't knock it out of the park the way they did, that would have been unprofitable, right? But clearly they did. So I guess my whole point here is that expectations are set. So it is at this level of quality by the customer. And if you deliver anything below that, you're not even going to get close to those unit sales, right? So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. But with what you're suggesting is you put out like a less than 12 hours of experience. I just don't think that's going to fly. Right?
No, I'm not suggesting that either. Because then you see things like, what is it, Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice 2.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Right.
Yeah,
Which immediately, right? Or Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. Obviously, you're going to get eviscerated if you've got a very, very low playtime for your golden path, right?
Yeah.
And you're not creating enough experiences. I don't really have a solution here. And this is something that I've just been like constantly racking my brain about.
I know.
Like,
yeah.
What are the things you could cut as single player games in this market?
Are completion rates changing? Are people falling off at points that are much sooner than they used to in the past?
There was an analysis in Ars Technica a while back when Steam achievements were public, looking at the completion rate for Call of Duty single player. And you could see in each successive entry, the number of players who had got the achievement that suggested they had completed single player was declining. Now, that is a franchise that like has so many different legs to it. So, I mean, you could argue multiplayer just got better and that diverted player attention. But there's some evidence of that play times have been decreasing, or at least completion times.
There's just so much to choose from. It's like the streaming wars right now, like the amount of content, the amount of games that are available. Phil, I remember a long time ago, you talked about how Assassin's Creed was like bloating and bloating and bloating and the amount of time. And then they finally were like, all right, let's just start to cut this back because they found that players weren't actually consuming all of the content that they made. So Adam, I think you're bringing up something interesting is like, what's the right number to be shooting for to deliver? Now, what is a $70 value? And it used to be a $60 value not that long ago for players. And how do you ROI that? You know, how do you get to that magical time, but do it in a way that makes the most sense? I guess that's the magic question of our industry.
But to Adam's point, like that's Assassin's Creed solved. They figured out how to monetize the additional time that comes with open world gameplay, which is like to sell DLC, right? Because if you have an open world gameplay, like you're going to have a longer engagement tail. Like you can have a pretty substantial PSU base even without new content. Because when you're in an open world game, there's this idea of kind of productivity of content. Like what, you know, for every hour of labor that you invest into the game, how much gameplay or engagement do you get in response to that. What is the return on your investment when you scale up, headcount on a particular game? And I think for open world games, that ratio is rather good. And so that gets you this consistent base of players who continue to have this long engagement tail, like Cyberpunk, like Witcher, or Baldur's Gate is another game that still has a really strong PSU share, even a year after it's released without any particular new content. And so then you can sell DLC to them, right? And that you're kind of back to the live service monetization angle, but you have to monetize the tail to justify the cost.
But then there's also the question of can you actually afford that cost, right? That would be the easy answer if we just look at the revenue side. But on the cost side, those additional DLC units don't just come in cheap. It's not like all of a sudden we've perfected the game. And that's why many games have chosen not to do the DLC route, or those DLCs are significantly delayed because they can't afford to build it.
I also see on the other side too, with Final Fantasy Rebirth, right? Why did that not work? It's a tried and true, IP that many people would love. And, you have to imagine that in some cases, having a massive amount of gameplay is actually a deterrent for people of well, I can't even start that series or get into that series because it's just, there's no way I'm going to, actually complete that. So it might be a world that we're living where we need to figure out what are the consumer motivations for playing games again. And it's not, I want to immerse myself for 80 hours anymore. It's going to be maybe some different motivations.
Okay. I want to bring up 2 points that are really important to understand. First of all, from a hardware perspective, we are at a much lower active install base, I would argue, right? People have not transferred over to the new consoles. We're starting to see a slower adoption rate. Part of that's because Sony's been a little bit slow, but most of it's primarily because Microsoft is totally fucking up this generation, and their subscription thing is not helping in terms of engagement on the platforms. And it's scary. It's really scary what's happening with Xbox. So again, I'm hoping that GTA is going to pick up the pace for next year, both on adoption on Xbox and PlayStation. So we'll see a higher level of people that are engaged with, next gen boxes, which will help sell through, right? That'll help kind of the unit sell through. But if we continue to see a decline in active install base, that will be a little bit scary. And I think a little bit of work probably I should do on that. The other thing is I can't believe I'm making this argument, but the expectations of these next generation of kids is such that you're playing one experience for years. My son has been playing fucking Fortnite forever. So their expectations are a lot different than they used to be. And so with that kind of player expectations and that player behavior, it's going to be really hard to convince them to pay, $70 for even a 20-hour
comrade
experience.
Are you joining the free-to-play revolution?
Yes. Yeah, obviously your free-to-play revolution is not working, but I think you can't really ignore that from a young player base of coming into the space in terms of what their player expectations are. And I think that's part of a big challenge that needs to be overcome as well. Of course, we're all about challenges. We're not about solutions right now, but I don't know. Yeah,
but I guess
hard.
the optimist in me goes towards what Jen is saying, which I think that players' tastes are changing. And that if we think about the strategy 10 years ago of playtime equals value, it's a lot more nuanced than that. You can have much better examples in the market when we look at some of the outliers of success of what are you going to lean into? The challenge that I see is when it comes to player value, there's also fidelity. So you look at something like Black Myth Wukong and you say, why did so many people hype up about that game, even outside of China? It's because of the fidelity of that game. It looks incredible. It is the top end of everything. They managed to do that by keeping it to a very tight path of an action RPG. It's more like a God of War than it is to a Elden Ring or to an open world. But at the same time, the fidelity of that is insane. So if you were to make another Black Myth Wukong in the West, it would probably equal the budgets of a Spider-Man or a God of War. You would still end up in the same challenge here. So my question here is what else do players value besides fidelity that we could lean into? I think that points at what you could cut.
That is a great consumer insights challenge. And I think it depends on genre and platform. And Cress, I think you bring up great things, which is if we can make assumptions that, sadly in the next year, we're not going to see a lot of growth in some of these and on some of these platforms, then what is that and how do we ask about that? And then hopefully if we do make the assumption that GTA changes that, we get revival in growth on these platforms. And then how does that continue to evolve. Sounds like we should call Stan at Beta Hat and have him do some CI work.
All right. Well, I think, is that
That's it
for tonight this time? Dude, it's good to have Adam back.
Hey.
A real adult in the room.
Hopefully I didn't put people to sleep with my monotone voice. Definitely not as active as you guys. You guys really add a whole bunch of energy to this podcast. I need to drink 3 coffees before I start this podcast.
We do Red Bull shots before.
Yeah.
You're not on the invite?
Mainlining the Red
is
Bull.
it sponsored Red Bull things?
Gives you wings.
You gotta just load up the speedball, dude. Make it happen.
No, not doing that.
All right. Well, we will see you in a couple weeks, Adam. I know you're going to be in and out of the pod as we continue to go. It's great to have you, and we'll pick some great product ideas for you to talk about next time you're here. All right, everybody.
Sounds good.
See you next week.
Peace out.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. As a fan of the show, it would help us out if you subscribe and leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. More importantly, are you a member of the Deconstructor of Fun Slack group? If you have 5 years or more of games industry experience, go to deconstructoroffun.com/Slack and apply to join. Join the games industry's best professional community filled with peers always willing to lend a hand. Or subscribe to our newsletter to get all the latest insights from the Deconstructor of Fun content creators. Thanks for listening.